Hey, welcome back to the podcast. We're so excited you've joined us for Home Sweet Homecast, Episode 3. We are trucking along here, getting on a weekly basis. We're finding our groove. It's been fun.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think we're getting there. We're making little changes
we got
every
changes.
week.
We got some funky little lighting. And it's been fun. I've learned how to do like YouTube lighting, basically, right?
Yes.
And so getting to practice that with all this stuff. So.
Yes. So we are learning. So this will even get better.
That's right. Yeah. I think it'd be fun for us to do like different sets for like the seasons.
That's fun.
So
I like
we'll
that.
Go season 1.
You know, it's about to be my favorite season.
What's your favorite season?
Valentine's.
That's your favorite season?
Yes. I love February.
Really? But okay, not because of Valentine's Day. She's about to tell you why.
That's a big part of it. I love
why
Valentine's
do you like
Day.
it,
It's also my birthday.
Yeah,
month.
that's right. Yeah, now the truth comes out.
Well, there's something.
Yeah. What are you doing for Valentine's? Or do you have anything planned this year for birthday?
Yet.
Okay.
We're working on it. Yeah, starting to put that together. So every year, my husband and I, your father.
That's the guy.
We usually do something special for Valentine's.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we cook and do a bunch of different courses when we cook and just kind of do stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
that's fun. That's very fun. Well, what else is going on? Anything new to update?
Oh, my gosh. Can we take a moment? Can I show you these shoes?
Sure. Go ahead.
Let me show you these shoes.
If you're audio only, you'll have to go look at the YouTube version of
Yes.
this to see
yes,
this.
you will.
But
You can just imagine them.
Yeah.
So these
There
are my
they
fun
are.
new shoes I found
they
this
are.
week. So Marshalls. So not very expensive,
There you go.
but they're just fun.
Yep.
So those are my shoes. They're like for those of you listening,
Yeah.
you know, and not seeing, they're shiny
They're
and
shiny. And like we've got all like the lights going
Yeah,
in, so like
yeah.
they're really popping on that.
lots of sandals, and they're comfortable.
That's right.
So, you know, as a realtor, we're doing a lot of walking,
Sure.
we're doing a lot of moving and going. So I had to make sure that they were comfortable.
Yeah.
So they are.
I love my boots and I wear them all the time, but like I actually have been considering getting like those like Dr. Scholl's pads.
Oh, yeah.
Just for the reason of walking around all the time. Like,
yes.
They're super comfortable, but it's like with how much you walk, you need something extra
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah. And if you're knocking doors and
Yeah.
getting ready for open houses.
It's like those Chick-fil-A shoes, you know, the people you see at like Chick-fil-A when they have
Yeah.
those cool like big,
yeah.
thick, you know, Skechers almost probably. So
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because they're standing up all
right,
day long.
all the time.
Yeah.
Walking around. Anyways, that's a tangent. Welcome to Home Sweet Homecast.
That's your shoe market update.
That's right. It's awesome. Well, today we're excited. We're talking about a bunch of different things today. But one of the things we're talking about mainly today, that the topic is really like how to pick an agent. And I think for me, what I just want to do up front is like, this isn't going to be some spiel for you to come pick us.
Right.
Like that's not what this is going to be for you. This is actually like, you know, if we weren't agents and we were consumers, or even if we're, we are agents, like who would we pick as agents?
Right.
How would we go about picking the process as agents and stuff like that? So we have a lot of stuff ahead, but I think before we jump in, we just kind of want to address some like key terms basically and get everybody up to speed about some basic realtor concepts basically. So the first is what's the difference between a real estate agent and a realtor?
Right. So the main distinctive difference is a real estate agent is anybody who has taken the state examination and they've gotten their license.
Right.
So anybody's a realtor that's done that.
Right.
So it's like if you're a realtor, T-O-R, then you've gone to the next level.
I never enunciate
Not
the tour.
realtor.
Yeah, realtor.
So if you're a realtor, then at that point, what you've done, you've also joined NAR, which is National Association of Realtors. And the benefit to that is that you're held to a whole different level with ethics and legal requirements and the things that you've got to go by.
Yeah. So for them, consumers, like, thinking about picking an agent, does it matter, if somebody's considered a realtor versus real estate agent? Does that matter?
So any real estate agent could have amazing ethics and values and be really great.
Right.
So, of course, there is that. You raise your risk, you raise your odds of picking a great agent if you take it to the next level where you have a realtor who is actually, being monitored by the National Association of Realtors.
Which is another governing board, basically.
Exactly.
So another website. Okay, so that's first thing. The other thing to talk about is a broker versus an agent. So what's the difference between a real estate broker and a real estate agent? So
we get a lot of questions about this. A lot of people really don't understand how this works, mainly because before probably 1960 or 70, this was done a little differently. So now A real estate agent is anybody, like we said, who has gotten their license, and they're licensed by the state of Texas. Nice. We are licensed per state. So as you know, if you want to practice in Texas, you can practice in all of Texas, but you have to have a Texas license. If you're going to practice in Oklahoma, you get an Oklahoma license. So any realtor can practice real estate. However, if you're not a broker, then you have to have a broker. So you have to list your license, hang your license almost with a broker. Yeah. So a broker is another level up as far as being governed and having a lot of requirements.
Well, and the liability a broker takes on is insane.
Right.
So like brokers, I mean, you can probably trust, again, it's agent by agent. So to be clear, these are all just like,
terminology,
generalizations really is what they are, I mean, and so, but brokers, like agents on a broker's team, the broker is liable for their actions, right? Correct. So that's a big difference between agents who are just simply on in a brokerage with a brokerage, basically, right? So
yeah, and so a broker, to become a broker, you have to be practicing 4 years out of the last 5 in real estate, and then you go through some extra training, and then also you take another test. Right. So that's the difference.
Okay. So those are just some real quick, key terms, basically, that we get a lot of questions about. So jumping in, what do agents do? Like, what do they do for me? Why should somebody? I mean, maybe even before we do that, do I need to use an agent? Agent, yes or no? And then if I do, if I'm using an agent, choosing to use an agent, what is it that they do for me? And just an overview, because I think through this we'll go specifically into the seller side and the buyer side. So this is really more just a generalization of what is the concept of an agent. Why would you want one? Yeah,
makes sense. Great questions. Yep. And we get that asked all the time, mainly from our for sale by owner clients that start out mainly starting to sell by themselves first. You think of it just like with an attorney. So, you don't have to use an agent, and you don't have to use an attorney when you go to court. Yeah. Should you? You have to decide that. Yeah. Real estate agents, we have a lot of expertise. We're doing it every day. We know the contracts. There's a lot of benefits to using an agent, just like there's a benefit to using an attorney when you go to court. I mean,
because what I think about it like this, this is something that we do on the daily basis. Like this is our daily, work is getting people through real estate transactions, right? But the average homeowner goes through 5 to 7 real estate transactions in their lifetime.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? So this is something that maybe.
Yeah.
And so,
unless your mom.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Unless your granny. Yeah. You're in the same house you've always been in.
Right. Yeah. And the investors buying it like crazy, right? So there's both sides. But, it's something you'll do 5 to 7 times on average, or something like that, in your lifetime. And so it's helpful to have somebody who's doing it consistently, right? That's just the concept.
Yeah.
So.
Who studied it. Right. Yeah. All the things, just like an attorney. So that's how I think of it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So that's kind of where it starts. The other thing that I think agents really do for us and people, consumers, is they really help represent your interests. And that's such a bland, almost like boilerplate statement. But I think what that means for you is that agent is going to be somebody who is advocating for you specifically. Now, there are some agency relationships where people get into dual agency, intermediary, like that kind of stuff, right? So there are some examples that we'll get into that stuff here in a little bit. But an agent represents you, and so you can trust that agent like you would an attorney to say things you may not want said to everybody, right?
Right. The word fiduciary, we'll come back to that. So that's a real key term, and to me, that is what sets a realtor apart from just somebody who, goes and opens a door.
Yeah, a friend. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, yep. So those are big ones. And then besides that, really the biggest thing, especially for us, that we're kind of big on here, as you heard from last episode, is just providing expertise about what's happening in today's market, the market that you're actually buying in. Because if you're watching this content, in a year from now, 2 years from now, this is probably outdated. I mean, some of these things will stay true. Last week's episode, though, will for sure be outdated, because last week was a lot of
the market,
market right now kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And so you want somebody who knows what's happening right now in the market you're buying in, and who's got some experience in it, or if it's changing, who's right on the cusp of adapting to it, that kind of stuff, right? So
and that requires going through transactions and buying houses with people. Yeah.
So, how much does an agent cost? I think that's, any service, how much does it cost?
So this is a great question for commission, right?
Right.
So in Texas, typically kind of the average is that the seller pays for a buyer's agent commission.
Right.
It's not required. There's actually a lawsuit about that's being processed right now through the courts. So it's not a required kind of a commission. You think of it more as a marketing fee a lot of times.
Right.
So when you offer a commission to a buyer's agent in the multiple list service, then that tends to bring more agents that want to show the property. Plus, a buyer, when they hire a buyer's agent, they sign a buyer representation agreement.
Right.
Usually in that agreement, there is a percentage of a commission that the buyer expects to make. And there's usually a clause in that agreement that says if this commission is not paid for by the seller, then that agent has the ability to go to that buyer and have the buyer pay that to them.
Yeah. Well, and even, I mean, there's some agents who work on fees, like who don't even
flat
do
fees and those kinds of
fees.
things.
Like, it's really agent by agent.
It is.
Traditionally, though,
It is.
it's usually, or at least in this market here where we're at right now, it's usually the seller is paying a 6% commission normally. Obviously, that's negotiable again. 3% of that goes to the seller's agent, 3% is going to the buyer's agent. So.
I think you look at it very similar to just like an attorney, so or even a CPA. So, fees do vary per attorney offices, per CPA offices. Depends on the expertise, the level of service, what things are offered. Same kind of deal.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's how much an agent costs or could cost. That's kind of the idea. And then, do you have to use an agent at all? So, this is kind of some general ideas of an agent. Do you even have to use an agent? So we've mentioned that a little bit with for sale by owner. Obviously, you've probably heard of for sale by owners. And so obviously those people aren't using agents. Do you have to use an agent?
So you do not. You're not required. You can sell a property anytime you want. You don't have to use an agent. You don't have to use a title company. You don't have to get title insurance. There's a lot of things you don't have to do. This is more about risk and knowing where you're going. To me, it reminds me a lot of like having a baby. So, when you're going to go have a baby, you can have the baby at home in a little kiddie pool.
Sure.
That happens. So you can do that, and that usually works out fine for everybody. The only time that's a difficulty is if there's any complications, right? So then if there's complications, you want to make sure that you're in a really high-level facility that can handle that and can take care of that. So typically there's not complications in real estate, but sometimes there are.
Yeah.
And when you get to those complications in those places, that's where an agent will have known that could be a possibility and would have set you up with the least amount of risk for that.
I feel like we needed a trigger warning for that for people who
had babies recently, especially.
Especially
recently.
The thing I was going to mention too that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you do need an agent to go inside a property. It doesn't have to be your agent, so you can't get away with that.
Yeah, most properties, yeah.
You can call the listing agent. You can see if they'll let you in, and that kind of thing. But if you're wanting to get in a property, I guess you can get a new construction pretty easily with open houses and stuff like that. But
Open Door.
Usually, Open Door.
Open Door, that's because Open Door owns that property, so they are the owner.
Yeah.
So for sale by owners can do the same. They could put a lockbox, and they could give everybody the lockbox combos. Sure. So you could do that if you're the owner. But usually if you're hiring an agent, then that person wants to hire an agent to get them in their house.
And then, and there's a whole bunch of things that'll come along with that. So let's jump in specifically to like sides of agents. Let's start sellers agents. So, I'm a seller and I'm about to sell my house. What do I need to do to get ready to do that? Like, what does the agent do for a seller specifically? Why would I even care about an agent?
Okay. Great question.
You're so affirming of my question. I appreciate it.
Just want to make sure you're doing great. You're doing good.
These are good.
So for a seller, when you're looking to hire a seller's agent, so the things you want to consider, first of all, of course, is can you work with this person?
Sure.
Are they personality? Are you compatible with them? Do you feel like you can trust them? Are they trustworthy? Do you get those kind of senses? Are they telling you the things that seems like they make sense for you?
I think on top of that, are they communicating in the way that you like to communicate?
Correct.
So, if you're a big email person, you probably want to make sure your agent's an email mainly person. If you're not a texting person, I am a texting person. I call. Those are my methods. I can do email, but my default is texting. So I work better with people who like to be texting all the time, kind of thing. So
Yeah. So that's primary because you're going to be in a relationship with that agent until the property closes. So that could be anywhere from, 30 days, 2 weeks, 30 days to, 4 or 5 months.
How long it takes, depends. And then that's based on really their, if they're wanting specifics about the properties, how picky, that kind of thing. So
absolutely.
Okay. So, but they're also, an agent's going to come in and they're going to analyze comparables.
Yes.
So that's a big function of what both agents really on buyers and sellers side
They
do.
got to know the market.
And they're letting you know, as far as the market goes, here's where this house rates, right? Like that's the goal of a comp is like, is the price, too high? Is the price too low? What are they seeing as far as, inside the house? Is this one updated? Is this one not? They're helping you understand like where this rates in the market.
And did they do their homework? If I was interviewing an agent to sell my home, I'd want to know, did they go and check out all the properties? Did they look at the photos? Can they tell me how mine compares exactly? Was there a pool and not a pool? Big lot, not a large size lot, all the things. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Or even just down to like, basic stuff like fences. Like what state of your fence?
There's a neighborhood close to us that's there's a part of the neighborhood that's on the lake, and so I need to make sure that agent knows that you can't compare my house if I'm not on the lake to one of the houses that are on the lake.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So they're looking at the area. So they're analyzing comparables. Agents are also going to, at least for a seller, going to provide advice on pricing. And so that's, we already kind of talked a little bit about that, but that's a big thing. They're going to help you set your price. And when I talk about prices, and you do this as well, obviously, we talk about it in terms of time. And so if you are gunning for the biggest profit, usually that means your house is going to sit on the market for a little while if you're going to go for that highest thing, and that's what you're wanting. Because usually you priced it a little higher than everybody else did. Doesn't make sense. And so you're hoping that somebody comes in. Sometimes that works. Sometimes that doesn't work.
Depends on the market.
Yeah,
it depends on if the market's going up in price or if it's going down in price. It depends on those things. Yeah.
So, but what they, if you do the opposite, if you price it low, that's usually when you see multiple offers, and that's when you see your house moving quickly and gets under contract quickly because you priced it low, so it got a lot of interest. It got a lot of people coming in who said this is a deal, so let's jump on it. And that has its advantages too. You may lose equity, but you also could actually gain equity because multiple offers might drive the whole thing up into a bidding war, right?
And with that said, you don't want an agent that's going to price it too low because then you're going to get people to come in the door that can't really afford your house anyway.
That's a good point.
And you'll get a lot of offers that are just really not great offers.
Yeah.
So pricing is really a big deal. And so I'd want to make sure the agent did their homework, really did their homework on that and could really talk to me about why they think the price is right.
Yeah, totally. All right. And then for sellers specifically, so that's both of those were a little bit about kind of both buyer and seller.
True.
But for sellers, marketing the home, that is, that's kind of why you want them. I mean, there's just the basic level where they're going to put it on MLS, multiple listing service, which is where like Zillow pulls from. If you're looking at Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, that's where those places are pulling from usually. And so that gets it exposed for sure, but that's not really marketing. Honestly, that's just putting it out there.
That's just basic. And with the internet now, pretty much in the first 2 to 3 days, every buyer who's looking out there, they're going to see your property.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, used to, it was difficult to get your property in front of a lot of people because it was before the internet, all the things. But now, every buyer who's looking will see your property within 2 to 3 days.
Right, which is a big deal. And so on top of that.
So that's not a big thing anymore. So if your agent, if that's all they got, that's not an agent that I would hire.
Well, that's where I was going with. The next thing is what else? The question should be, what else besides putting it on the MLS are you going to do to sell my home, to get my home sold? And so that has again, agent by agent here, there are lots of different approaches to that. You have some agents who are all social media. You have some agents who are all ad based, and so they're going to advertise your thing. You have agents who do all of them. That is really more specific about the agent's style of doing it. What is your favorite way of marketing a home?
So most of the studies that we're seeing with social media right now, they're recommending drone photography. Tends to get a lot of exposure, and video. Video is where it's at. That's where people are getting most of their exposure. And if that's what's important to you, and that would be important to me if I was going to find a seller's agent, then you've got to make sure that you check out their websites. You need to check out their social media sites.
And you'll know.
Yeah.
Like, you'll know.
Yeah. See what things they're doing.
Yeah. So that's a big thing. I think also, for me, this is kind of random, but like for me, some sellers and agents are having their sellers do, obviously the pictures of the home, but then they also include a floor plan, a layout.
Yeah.
And I think that's really helpful too, because a lot of times, you've got these great pictures, you see this great kitchen, but you don't really know where that kitchen lands in the house. That they're focusing more on the space than they are about the doorways, right? Because like, what's sexy about a doorway, Yeah. I mean, some of them
Nothing.
are like, some of them are refinished or like all that kind of stuff. It's cool, but so it's kind of hard to tell where the homes lie as far as each other, or where the rooms rather lie. So.
Yeah. And those walkthroughs, you can do the Matterport tours where you can kind of electronically digitally walk through the house. That helps some. Some people don't like those, but those are helpful too, along with the floor plan.
Well, and that's the virtual. I mean, that's a whole.
Yeah, that's coming.
That 5 years from now, like you're gonna laugh at this episode because we're gonna it's coming. Like virtual reality, Oculus, putting on that and walking through a home, and that's how you're gonna just tour your homes from home. Like, which
is really interesting when you think about it, because when I first started real estate, the realtor's value was about finding and showing a house. So now the value is not really in finding a house, because it's all on the internet.
Everybody has access to it.
So everybody has access to finding their home. So now we still are needed to show the home, but that's eventually going to go away as well when virtual comes in. So really the realtor's value is changing and moving. And as realtors, you need an agent who's keeping up with that. Yeah. So you need a realtor who has other value, the negotiation, the contract, the sales pitches, how to make your property stand out, those kinds of things.
And I'm sure that I'll eat what I'm about to say someday, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But like I would think that as far as contracts and negotiation goes, those will always be values of the agent, because it'll always be helpful to have somebody who can tell you, expertise in the market, here's where this lands, but then also tell you, like, here's how we're going to negotiate. We're going to strategically approach this process to do that. So,
the strategy. Yeah. That's Gary Keller, who's the founder of Keller Williams, which is our brokerage. Right. That's what he said all along is truly an agent's main value is fiduciary. Yeah. And then we'll get to that. But what that really means is making sure that they're taking care of your interests above their interests, above anybody's interests.
Yeah, which is huge. All right, so then, but the seller, they're going to market your home. Obviously, that looks like a lot of different ways. So, ask your agent. Like, you could ask them for stats. Could be here. Yeah. Like what?
Yep. How quickly?
What's the success rate?
Yeah.
Or what's the engagement if they're mainly a social person? What's the engagement that you're seeing when you're posting these things? Are you running Google ads? Are you running Facebook ads? Things like that. And then if they're not, like, have they done it? Do they, they may not be. They may not be the part of their regular routine. And so, if that's something you're wanting to explore, like, you know how to do it.
Yeah. Why do they not do it? What do they do? What do they do instead?
Can they back that up? That's a great point too.
What's their way to get you the same kind of traffic? Yeah.
So as for sellers too, and this is a big one. Just talking to two people recently that I've met with. They're also for a seller, the agent can also be really helpful in letting you know what you need to be doing to your home to get it ready to sell.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, when somebody thinks about a realtor, they think about, okay, I'll call them when I'm ready to sell, and that's going to be after I've done all these little things around the house, I've painted these things, that kind of stuff. We can save people a lot of money if they'll let us come on the front end and say, hey, actually this paint color, we don't need that, or hey, actually we do need this paint, or this wallpaper is actually good or not, that kind of stuff. So keep in mind, a realtor can really just be a great source of
sounding
advice
board
and wisdom, and I mean, honestly, like penny saver, right? Like they can help you save some money, or let you know, like, hey, this is what you're going to need to probably do this to sell it, or it's going to cost you money on your home price, right? Yeah. And so that lets you know that you probably need to start saving for that upgrade or whatever it is. So,
and to your point, we've had these conversations recently because it's January, and so people are starting to get ready to go on the market during spring, summer. So a lot of our people that we talk to who keep very immaculate homes, who are very have a lot of homeowner pride, and they update their homes. So
my father-in-law, he's listening right there.
So those folks, usually they go a lot farther than they need to prepare their home.
Exactly.
for sale, and so we can usually save those kinds of people. We can save you a lot of money.
And stress and time.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
stress
also
and time,
like
hard labor.
I talked to a lady this morning who's getting ready to get their house sold, and they're in between homes trying to move, kind of thing, and my gosh, like just it can save you the stress. Like if you had a realtor come in and say, actually, you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
Take that off your mind. Just get your next place, whatever it is.
Yeah, we can minimize your list.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and let you know what actually you need to worry about. So that's a big part.
Yeah. So that's a good agent. So if you have an agent come in the door who can do all that and do those kinds of things and offer that advice, then that's going to be a good selling agent.
Yeah. So we talked about negotiating. So I will move past that one. But so finally, that's what an agent's doing for a seller, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you pick the right seller's agent? We've mentioned things like along the way we've talked about questions to bring up to your agent as you're interviewing them. Is there anything else we want to mention about specifically a seller's agent that you think is important?
So a couple of things I would just kind of think about is, you've got to decide, do you want to work with an individual agent or do you want to work with a team agent? If that's a thing or not for
What's
you.
What's the difference? Why does that
So
matter?
an individual agent is an agent who they're the only agent that you'll be working with through the whole transaction. Sometimes they have some administrative support. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So, you want to find out things from that agent, like what do you do when you're sick? What do you do when you take vacation?
Yeah.
What's your coverage like?
Yeah, that's good.
So you want to know that kind of stuff about an individual agent.
I think about that with part-time agents too.
Yes.
Like if you're hiring a friend as part-time,
Sure.
like part-time agents do very well. For me, I did that for a little while, and it was a little difficult for me to stay on top of stuff. And so what is your, if you're at your 9-to-5 job, how do I have access to you? If something goes wrong in the contract, what is your contingency? How are you playing that? So
Yeah, I think I just want to know what kind of agent situation I'm dealing with and make sure we've got a strategy for all of that.
Right.
With the team, depends on how big the team is, depends on how organized the team is. Do they communicate between their members really well so that you don't have to retell things over and over and over again? Do they have any longevity on the team? Are people staying there for very long, or are they always turning over?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's company stuff. That's stuff you look at companies, at workplaces when you're applying. So same thing in realtor.
So that's how I would shop a team.
Okay. Teams, what else? Anything else?
Team versus individual. Then on top of that would be things like how many homes like yours have they sold, like your price point, or maybe your type, if it's lake place or if it's farm and ranch. And then
land, I mean, that's a huge part too.
I mean, that's different.
Like, land is wildly different than residential.
Absolutely.
Commercial, obviously, is wildly different than residential. Luxury.
Resort, luxury.
Those are all different approaches to how you go about it. So do they sell homes like yours? How'd they do with it? What percent did they get of the list price? I mean, you can ask those kinds of questions. Things like how many transactions are they doing a year or a month? You want an agent who's doing enough transactions that they are keeping up with what's going on with legal. They're in the game.
They're in the game. Yeah, they're in the game.
They're in the game. They're playing ball. They may not be the Michael Jordan or whoever.
Sure.
But they're playing ball.
But they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're involved.
Yeah.
And so. And then I think in that scenario, break that down to stats for them. So break that down to, okay, so you're in the game, but let's talk about how long are you days on market, that kind of stuff. So
days on market, percent of list price, those kind of, how do you compare to other agents that were selling in the MLS?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
And then real quick, as we're talking about seller's agent, if you're a seller, like let us know if you have questions. Like,
sure.
If there are other, if you're like, hey. What do I? This isn't a plug for us. I'm just talking about like we're glad to help you figure out those right questions to be asking.
Sure.
So
yeah,
it's a hard thing to do. So let's flip to buyer's agents real quick.
Okay.
So let's talk about buyer's agents. So I want to take a pause before we really get into the details of that because I think this matters more to buyers than it does to sellers. So whose side is the agent on? This is a big deal for buyers because I think a lot of buyers, like what I hear the most is that, okay, if I don't use my own agent, that's going to save the seller some money. And so my offer is going to look better than somebody else's. First off, that really doesn't play out like you think it's going to play out. Usually just what happens is the seller's agent pockets that 6% if they pick your offer. And the reality is unless you are a real estate guru, which is those exist, you're probably going to have a hard time writing an offer that gets accepted, effectively at least, right? And so, or at least in a timely manner, and that they haven't already accepted somebody else's offer if it's a home that's going fast. So keep that in mind. That's something to hear. The other thing that we talked about already a little bit with seller's agents, right? So if you are calling the seller's agents to get in the seller's house, that seller's agent is working for the seller. Okay, so keep that in mind. Like the things you tell them, if you walk in and you say, "Oh man, I need a house," and like tomorrow, like we got to get out of this spot. You know, our rental, lease is up here in 2 weeks, and we need to be in a spot, in 2 weeks. Those are things that the seller's agent gains power over you in that scenario, because they now know you're desperate, and so they know that they can play you, right? Little details like that, little details like price range. Like if you're saying your price range, if you say something that's higher than the list price, they're going to probably try to get you up there, right? Because you have now opened the door. So keep in mind that person is solely working for the seller.
Correct.
Same thing applies to builders. So that's where I was headed next.
Yes.
For builders, it's the exact same thing. When you're going to a builder's open house, it can be both ways. Some builders use an agent to hold those open, model homes open, right?
Right.
But some builders are big enough where they actually have people on their staff who are at this. But regardless, that person's working for the builder.
Yeah.
Until you get a signed, contract with the buyer's agent, that person's working for the other side. And so keep that in mind, because again, the things you tell them can really screw you over in the deal,
right?
And take that home away from you. So that was new construction, seller's agents.
Right.
We talked about those. Anything you want to add real quick?
Well, with the buyer's agent, keep in mind that the listing agent, based on what the listing agreement says, so that is what determines who gets paid and how they get paid. So I think like you had referenced, so if you're thinking that by working with the seller's agent, your offer is more likely to get accepted, or they're going to make more money or whatever. So that's not always true.
Right.
So it just depends on what agreement that they made with the seller. So the way that a buyer's agent gets paid, once again, is through that listing agreement. It directs the listing agent what to offer to a buyer's agent.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's all negotiated when they sit down with the seller.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that works. I think that the thing to remember here is the fiduciary. So
real quick, we should have done this at the beginning. Define fiduciary real quick.
So fiduciary, I actually have that definition right
awesome.
here. So fiduciary is someone who manages money or property for someone else. And when you are named a fiduciary, you're required by law to manage the person's money and property for their benefit, not for yours. So that is what a fiduciary is. So, there's situations, and if you're using an agent that you don't have a formal buyer's representation agreement with, that agent is not required to be a fiduciary for you.
Right.
So they may give you advice or recommendations or whatever, maybe even not intentionally so much, but they don't necessarily always have your best interest in mind. An agent is required to always be fair. So real estate agents are required to always be fair with whoever they're transacting with. But being fair is different than taking it to the next level of actually having all of your interests in mind with anything that occurs with the transaction.
Is that the same for builders, though? Like builders and for sale by owners, right? If the builder, if the person at the open house is staff of the builder, those people probably aren't even necessarily required to be fair.
Well, they're not required to be agents.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah. So they're not governed by that. Right. Code of ethics.
Yeah, so they can tell you, man, we really think this is worth, a $300K house. Obviously this is going to go for $500K.
Yeah.
They can get you to do those things and they have to be fair,
Right. And the builder, they go by a code of ethics for builders. Yeah. So that's a whole different code than realtor.
We're talking about shady people. That's a good point. We're talking about shady people. These are like worst case scenarios.
Right.
But this is just trying to highlight the point of that's why a fiduciary is helpful.
Correct. Yeah, because a fiduciary in a builder in a new construction situation, if your agent knows that you absolutely don't want any drainage problems with your property, and then you go out and of course the builder's rep doesn't know any different maybe, and so they are trying to sell this particular lot, and it looks great. Well, maybe an agent might be able to suggest an inspector who specifies in drainage because they know that that's a concern to you. Sure. So they've got your interests in mind specifically.
Well, and you just brought up something we haven't talked about yet, but like the agent is also somebody who's very well connected, and so the agent can be your one-stop shop. It's almost like a general contractor, right? The agent is the person who knows the lender, who knows the inspector, who knows the title company, who knows, all these people that could be involved in this transaction for you, because there are a lot of players in a real estate transaction. Yeah. So the agent can be your connector for that, to help you get that going.
Yep. Yeah. And you want an agent who's well connected.
Yeah.
And an agent who's done a lot of transactions with other agents is great, because then they have relationships. They've had situations where they've had to work together on things.
Yeah,
and so they can oftentimes get you information or just be more helpful.
Yeah. Totally. All right. So let's talk about buyer side. What does the agent do? What are the agent's jobs as the buyer's agent? So first, for me, that's the market insights. Mentioned that earlier with sellers, but it's like, where does this house rate in the market? And then a big one is they're just going to help you find homes. Everybody has access to Zillow. Everybody has access to these, which is fantastic. But they can help you have access to those homes in a search-based kind of way, where it comes to you versus you have to find them. But even more than that, they can help you, especially if they're at a brokerage like we are, have access to off-market properties. So they can help you actually find properties through their connections in the industry that are never even going to go to Zillow or MLS or stuff like that. So it gets you the potential, depending on the agent, of more properties coming to you. So
yeah, and your buyer's agent, they're going to be the ones to do the negotiating. They're going to be the ones to find out all of the interesting details that you need to know. They'll look over the seller's disclosure and see if there's anything you should be concerned about on that. So the buyer's agent's going to be reviewing all the documents and coordinating with the seller's agent to get you the answers you need so you can make the great decision. Keep in mind, an agent is all about getting you the information you need and then giving you options so that you can make the best choice.
Yeah, totally.
Whether they're buyer's agent or seller's agent.
Right. Yep. And then they let you in. That's kind of the next one.
Yep. They open the door.
They open the door and they get you in the house.
Door openers. Hopefully they do more than just open the door.
They have those gold jackets on as they're doing it. Yeah, the whole thing.
Yes. I have a gold jacket.
Do you really? That's awesome.
Yes, I have a shiny gold jacket.
You gotta get that. It's like a 5-year anniversary or something like that.
Yes.
Being in the business.
Yes,
thing.
we'll have to do that for you when you've been with us 5 years.
They'll help you write contracts and negotiate. So that's
and hopefully they have some expertise as they're walking you through the home.
Yeah.
So, along with opening the door is they're not inspectors. Agents are not inspectors. We're not attorneys. We're not any of those. We're realtors. Due to the fact that we see a lot of homes, we're able to say, you know what, that looks interesting. We might need to make sure that we get that checked out. So,
well, I heard, again, we're not inspectors, but what I heard, which was interesting, we're in Texas. It's crazy hot, and dry
hot,
sometimes.
Yeah, wet and hot.
So they're settling, and settling's a thing for a lot of older homes. But talking about the cracks in walls, if it's like a vertical crack, usually this is all general. And again, not an inspector, but what I've heard, to be clear. Don't hold me to this.
Yeah. Disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. Exactly. Yeah. But I just thought this was interesting. Like a vertical crack could usually indicate settling. But if it's a horizontal crack, that's usually more of it could possibly be foundation stuff. And I was like, just the angle of that is fascinating.
Yeah, and then all the other factors you have to consider and all the
else.
things. Yeah.
And drainage and all that stuff. So, but writes contracts for you and helps you negotiate. This is a big one, negotiating, especially on the buyer side. The seller side's a lot different because once the seller's in the contract, you'll phrase this much better than I do, but they're kind of in the contract. Yeah, the buyer's the one that gets the out. So the seller can just say no.
Yeah, the seller does not have in a Texas residential contract as many outs in a contract as a buyer does. A buyer has many places where they can get out based on, the buyer beware kind of thing that for a long time buyers were taken advantage of. And I think the backlash on that was now that buyers have quite a few outs in the purchase contract.
Yep.
So that's another thing is that a good buyer's agent is going to protect me. If I hired an agent, they would protect me from losing my earnest money in a deal. They'll let me know when time limits are going to be coming down the pike as far as documents and different things that need to be seen and done and checked off so that I'm always protected along the whole closing process.
Totally. And I think on top of that, they're also going to help you when it comes to lost my train of thought. We talked about this the other day. They help you when you're in the transaction and they help you know what the seller is actually looking for. So the part of their job, we talked about this the other day. That's why it was fresh on my mind.
Good point.
It wasn't fresh on my mind. It should have been. They'll help you go. They'll help liaison with the seller's agent to figure out what's the seller going for. Is it just price, or is it time? Does the seller need a lease back, or all these different things?
Or do they want to leave a bunch of furniture
behind,
or whatever?
What's their goal? And so that agent helps you figure out what's actually potent, basically, to that seller, And so you can make sure that's in your offer if you can do it. So I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, and we're coming off of a market too where it required a lot of expertise for the buyer's agents because there was so much demand and so much competition.
Well, that service homeward that we had to do just to like help people get, like, we had to agents had to get so creative to figure out ways to get offers accepted. And so there were crazy things that came out of that,
Yeah. And so you've probably got a lot of agents that are really great with their ability to do all that now. Yeah. And we're going into a little different market, so it's slowed down a bit, and there's not as much competition. So now you've got to have an agent that really studies the pricing and really studies what things are selling at.
Yes, big time.
So that's really where the expertise is going now.
That's the name of the game. And I love your phrase that you've said recently, which is like in the previous market, it was really just looking at like what sold around it, but now you're looking at, like, for sellers, who you're competing with. Yeah. Like, that's such a big part of the game now is, if you go on the market at, I don't know, $355 or whatever, and somebody goes on the market at $350, like, you just got priced out of the market. And in this, and obviously it depends by area, but that it's now a competitive market analysis versus a comparable, right? And so
doesn't matter so much what's sold. What matters is what are you competing with out there.
So just interesting stuff. But we talked about connecting you with people. So how do you pick the right buyer's agent? Again, that same question of what's useful for them. These are all things to be aware of as the buyer's agent. As the buyer looking for an agent.
I'd want somebody that I didn't mind spending some time with.
Yeah, because you're going to spend a lot of time.
Because you're going to be in the car, you're going to be in houses, you're going to be walking through. And I want somebody who's going to question me and ask me, what do you think about this house? What do you think about this room? That they're really trying to figure out and help me figure out what it is that I really want, what I like.
Yeah, that's the professional mind maker upper, right?
Yes.
Like, that's what
I love that.
You're bringing your person along who can say, okay, between this and this, where are you feeling? Like, it just help you along the journey of figuring out your next home.
Yeah. I don't want somebody who's just going to stand over in the corner and wait for me to look at the house.
But I think you're right. I mean, I think compatibility, especially on the buyer side, is a really big deal. Like, you spend a lot of time with them. Yeah. You're going to go through ups and downs with offer
can
and
be
getting
stressful.
Accepted. Yeah. And so somebody who's going to help you through those times, be there for you. Whatever it looks like, pour you a drink if you need it, or take you to coffee to help you cool off because you're so angry, like whatever it is, it's the counselor role of that.
Yeah, and they know the right questions to ask, so they know what to ask you. It's really important as both a seller and a buyer that the agent help you think non-personally. So help you that's the reason, one of the big reasons why you also have an agent is when you're in the middle of a transaction, it's your house. Then you're going to be so personally connected that you'll be very more emotional than you would be if it was just a business transaction. So an agent is ideally supposed to help you step back a little bit and see that.
Well, keep your goals in mind.
Exactly.
If you're, is your goal to be in your next house, or is there time, like, helping you reframe everything to, does this get in the way of our goal? Does this get in the way of that? Yeah. So, okay. And then same thing here. We said the same thing for sellers. Buyers, if you have questions or if you're wondering about, questions that you need to be asking your agents, let us know. We're glad to help. Comment, whatever. And we're always glad to help you figure out how to best interview agents, because it's a big deal. And having the right agent really makes the process so much easier, smoother, and all that. So
absolutely. Yeah, you want an agent that you really, I've heard this before about attorneys. Okay. And I keep referencing attorneys, but they're very similar to us in professional services. So, there's a lot of hard, difficult attorneys out there. But an attorney who's a really great attorney is worth their weight in gold.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's very true for agents.
Yeah. All right. Well, the other questions I could think of were, you already talked about team stuff, and then just maybe a basic question of, like, what's their track record for both sides? Yeah. How many, for buyers, how many offers have you had accepted in the last month? For sellers, how many homes have you had sold in the last month? What was the days on market? Were they over list price? Were they under list price? I think those kinds of questions just help you get a gauge for where that agent is.
And don't forget to shop their testimonials.
That's a good point. So I'm glad you said that, because what are people saying about them? What are your friends saying? If it's a friend who said this person's awesome, that's great. But were they the one experience out of the 50 that weren't good or whatever? Right. So social media helps a lot with that. Obviously, most agents are on social media, and so that lets people be able to go see reviews. Google's the same way. Google Business. Yeah. Reviews are helpful for that. But also give the agent a shot, I would say too. Like sometimes people just, do bad, this, like sometimes people just do bad reviews.
Right.
Because something goes haywire, miscommunications occur. And so if you're worried about those reviews, like still take it to that agent you're interviewing and say, hey, help me explain what happened to this.
Yeah.
And if they look like they're trying to say, oh, take blame, if they're not taking blame, or if they're trying to pass it off, what's going on. Like, you get that, that.
Yeah.
But if they're obviously really honest about, that may be able to help you understand where that review came from. So.
Well, and it's not uncommon too for an agent to have a list of, 5-7 people that they transacted with that you can call.
Yeah.
And you can
list,
ask
basically.
about them.
Yeah. I just think that I heard some statistic that talked about how people don't trust 5 stars. Like, you don't want to be a business that's rated 5 stars.
That's
like,
excellent.
You don't want to be, because they're like, that's not true. Like, they're obviously paying for reviews and stuff. So you want to be like the 4.6, 4.8 kind of range, where it's like, you're better than 4.5, so you're doing well. So it's just because that's my point. That's why I brought that point up, was you're going to see some negative reviews, but like use those as talking points with the agent in the interview to temper kind of and to help understand that.
And I kind of shop number of reviews myself.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me.
I mean, especially if I'm on Amazon, I just taught Lauren how to do this. Like, when you're looking at products, like, go look. Now Amazon's hard because people buy pay per view now too. But you want the one that's got 2, that's like 5 stars, but it's 2 reviews, right? Or the 4.8 reviews, but it's
with 100.
Thousands of reviews.
Yeah.
So, anyways, those are all just talking points. Again, like, let us know if you have things that you specifically are wanting to ask, or trying to figure out if this makes sense to ask your agent. We're here for you. Like this.
Absolutely.
The goal of this is just trying to help y'all do well when it comes to picking your agent, because it's a significant thing that will change the enjoyment of the process, your fulfillment from the process.
How much money you make.
That's a big part of that too. It's a big part of that.
Yeah.
So,
and we want the profession as a whole to have a good reputation.
Yeah, big time.
So the more you have a good experience, the better the reputation is for us.
And the better agents that stay in the game. And,
absolutely.
So the whole thing. So any closing thoughts before we wrap up today?
There's a lot of good agents out there, and with just a little bit of guidance, I think you'll find a great one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, we're glad to help any way we can. So, as always, thank you for being here this week on Home Sweet Homecast. We have loved getting to just share this information with you. Please like us on if you're on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can keep up to date with what's coming your way.
Yes.
We're trucking along. We're going to keep this thing going. It is here to stay, so stay with us. Keep coming back.
And Valentine's is coming.
That's right. That's good. And that'll be fun. And so we'll do some fun stuff.
Yeah, we will. We'll do some fun stuff.
If you're on Facebook, Instagram, feel free to please comment us. Let us know what you're thinking about this. Share it to friends that you think could use this information, who are maybe thinking about buying or selling. That's what this is for. This is just to resource them in this process, and you in this process if you're there. And then besides that, honestly, just let us, we would love to hear what you're thinking about this podcast. We're 3 weeks into this.
Give us some feedback.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you think, whether it's a text, if you know us personally, just shoot us a text.
Yeah.
Call us, just let us know what you're thinking. So.
Yeah. Okay. Tell everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
We need some followers.
That's awesome. That's great.
I'm not gonna pull any punches. We just need some followers.
Yeah, heck yeah, why not? I mean, we're trying to help people, so it's good. All right, well, thank you all for joining us this week on the Home Sweet Homecast. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, have a good one.